to hold your breath. Don't be scared, don't be spooked, do not fear, we don't bite. Although those creatures come in droves, 'cause everything is spooky. Keep things light. Welcome to the welcome to the Valley of
I am Ned Murray, and I've rented out the studio on Haunted Hill tonight for Jason, who wants to have a viewing of House on Haunted Hill. A haunted viewing of House on Haunted Hill. He's so amusing. There'll be food, drink, gimmicks under the guise of horror, maybe a few murders. You're all invited, of course. I bet you're all wondering why I brought you here tonight.
I really don't understand why you kidnapped us.
Kidnapping is just another word for special invitation.
You know, I was on my way to go to dinner with my family.
Oh, geez, God, no wonder why you were only in silent movies.
I really don't appreciate the fact that you brought us here for this rather undesirable occasion. I agree with Negan. How dare you kidnap us?
Look, guys, this wasn't even my idea. This was Jason's idea. He wanted to have this party in the first place. We can point fingers all night long if we want, but the point is, you guys are here until the viewing of House on Haunted Hill is all over. And until it's over, the doors, the windows will be barred and locked, so there's no way of leaving. But once the movie's over, you're all free to leave. And you will be leaving with a very special prize.
What kind of prize are you giving us then?
Well, the best kind of prize is a surprise.
Loser.
And if you guys are worried about the studio being haunted or whatever, like it supposedly is, you guys are some of the scariest monsters in horror. In your case, Negan, you know, people in horror. I'm sure you guys can take on a few ghosts.
I really don't think I belong here.
No one's talking to you, Kaylee.
Rude!
Anyways, why wouldn't you guys want to be here? House on the Haunted Hill is one of the most classic horror movies of all time. House on Haunted Hill came out in 1959 and is known as one of the best haunted house movies of basically classic horror cinema. It's a mixture of a whodunit and at the same time, you know, being a little bit of a suspenseful, scary story. The movie was directed by William Castle, and Castle was kind of known as basically the gimmicky poor man's version of Alfred Hitchcock. He always loved instilling twists into his movie, very similarly to Alfred Hitchcock, but he never achieved the amount of fame, mainly because of the quality in his movies compared to Alfred Hitchcock. The other thing about William Castle is his movies were incredibly gimmicky. He directed such movies such as The Tingler, and in that movie, very similarly to kind of this movie, he likes to try and get a reaction from the audience. With movies such as The Tingler, he would put basically buzzers in the seats, and he would have someone in the movie basically like telling the audience, "Scream before the Tingler kills you," or, you know, something like that. And he did this with a lot of his movies, as he always tried to be incredibly gimmicky, while at the same time trying to put out a good quality movie. Unfortunately, the public saw them as gimmicks, and they didn't see them as, you know, much more than that, compared to what Alfred Hitchcock was doing with, making actual artistic movies. This is not putting William Castle down by any means. I love a lot of his movies, and some of them can actually have really good twists, have a lot of good suspense, and he can be a very good storyteller. It's just that most of the time his movies really focus on the actual genre of horror compared to Hitchcock, who mainly focused on thrillers. Besides Psycho, which kind of was a horror movie. There aren't really many gimmicks in House on Haunted Hill, except for maybe a few, fourth wall breaking. But other than that, it's actually a pretty good, solid haunted house movie. So, are you guys ready to watch House on Haunted Hill? Well, it's a shame. We're watching it anyway. This is House on Haunted Hill. The movie starts with a black screen. I'm already in suspense. And eventually we start hearing screams from the television. This does eventually lead to some spooky ghost noises and chains moving around. Another good, really old-fashioned spooky stuff. We are then introduced to the head of Watson Pritchard, who basically, this is one of the instances of, fourth wall breaking, where the character is talking directly to the audience.
The ghosts are moving tonight, restless, hungry. In just a minute, I'll show you the only really haunted house in the world.
And he warns us of the things that could happen at the house on Haunted Hill. This does really start to show the gimmicky side of the movie, but it's still something that I thoroughly enjoy for a good old-fashioned spooky movie. I kind of put it up there with the intro to Frankenstein with Edward Van Sloan, where he basically introduces the movie and he says, this is a very scary thing and you guys better be prepared for it. Except for the difference is basically Pritchard's character, he very much... he's actually a character in the movie compared to Edward Van Sloan, who just introduces the movie. We are finally introduced to the house on Haunted Hill, along to Frederick Loren, played by Vincent Price. Swoon. Vincent Price just oozes class in this movie.
I'm Frederick Loren, and I've rented the house on Haunted Hill tonight so that my wife can give a party. A haunted house party. She's so amusing.
Every single thing that he says is very sarcastic, backstabbing, biting, and all that, but he comes off as classy with literally every sentence that he says. Frederick Loren also introduces us to the plot of the movie, and in a manner of speaking, he's not talking to us, the audience, although it does look like he's talking to us, the audience. This is actually a moment where he's basically kind of narrating a letter that he wrote to a bunch of people who are in desperate need of money, but in a manner of speaking, it's also almost like he wrote the letter to us, the audience, as well, where we are also invited to the house on Haunted Hill.
You're all invited.
We then see the other visitors, where he introduces them all one by one and basically gives off the reasons why they are in need of money. They all enter the house, and already things seem to be a little bit uneasy.
Who closed the door?
This is actually a pretty excellent start to the movie. You might be thinking, oh, it's just a chandelier falling down. What's so special about that? One of the great things about this movie is the fact that you legitimately don't really know throughout most of the movie if the house is haunted or not, or whether or not Frederick Loren actually did basically plan out all of the spooky things in the house just to drive some of the people mad, or whether or not he's trying to get all these people in on his scheme, which, as we find out, he has some major wife issues.
Of all my wives, you're the least agreeable.
But still alive.
Make a good headline. Playboy kills wife with champagne cork. You remember the fun we had when you poisoned me?
Something you ate, the doctor said.
We then meet his wife, Annabelle Loren, played by Carol O'Mart. who basically hates him as much as he hates her. It definitely seems that she was actually not the planner of this party, and that he's definitely the one who is perpetrating this whole event. We can't really trust Vincent Price, but at the same time, it seems that you can almost not even really trust her as well. One of the things I really love about this movie is the dark humor and the conversations between these two characters in particular. They're always backstabbing or, saying just very nasty and being incredibly sarcastic. Now, I have to say, one of the problems with this movie is these are really the only two compelling characters. It's not that any of the other actors are bad, it's mainly just the fact that the characters themselves are not really that interesting, as we've already basically heard everything that they want and need, aside from maybe one character, but I'm not going to spoil that just yet. It's these two who we're really focused on. It's these two who are the main characters, and this is their story. Everyone else is simply just an audience member in this House of Madness. Eventually, Frederick does join the guests and introduces himself, as well as the rules to them being able to win the money.
The caretakers will leave at midnight, locking us in here until they come back in the morning. Once the door is locked, there's no way out. The windows have bars that a jail would be proud of, and the only door to the outside locks like a vault. There's no electricity, no phone, no one within miles, so no way to call for help. So if any of you decide not to stay for the party, you must let me know before midnight. Of course, if you leave, I shan't be able to pay you anything.
I'm interested in your reasons for this, party.
I think everyone wonders what they would do if they saw a ghost.
One of the characters, who we were already introduced to, Pritchard, basically is the caretaker of the house, and he once had relatives who lived in the house, and he is basically the guide showing where all the weird, nasty, spooky things happened.
Richard, why don't you take us on a tour through the house and let's see what happens, huh?
See that stain? Blood. A young girl was killed here. And whatever got her wasn't human.
Mr. Norton did a good deal of experimenting with wines. But his wife didn't think it was any good.
So he filled the vat with acid and threw her in. But none of the murders here were just ordinary. Just shooting or stabbing. They've all been sort of wild, violent, and different.
Look out!
God, she didn't fall in.
Now, the one character who is a little bit annoying, but it's kind of understandable that she is the way she is Nora. Basically, her thing is just to be there and scream and be scared. She's basically supposed to be driven insane by the happenings in the house or by the schemes of the Laurens. She accidentally loses sight of the handsome character, that's basically his stereotype, where she tries to find him and then this happens. Okay, that's just hilarious. Now, the thing about this movie is, okay, it's not scary. Maybe once upon a time this movie was scary, but honestly, the scares haven't really aged well. He gets knocked out unconscious. Now, Mr. Hunk and Nora explore the house a little bit, but as always, something bad happens. This was scary. It's literally an old lady just going, eh, and then just like floating right along. It's just like, okay, what the hell is she? Is she on a Segway or something?
Creepy old lady riding on a Segway. Creepy old lady riding on a Segway. Creepy old lady riding on a Segway. Bam, 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 bam.
Eventually, Annabelle does actually wind up visiting Mr. Hunk. That's going to be his name, guys. And basically kind of tries to low-key convince him that Frederick is out to kill her.
You know, of course, that I'm his fourth wife. The first simply disappeared. The other two died. Lance, I don't want to join them.
Oh geez, I wonder if anyone else is getting this idea. Annabelle does join the party after being incredibly forced by her husband, and she's basically of the same mind as everyone else. You know, just give them the money and go. Why do they have to stay there the whole night? But Frederick is very dedicated to this whole thing, and they are not leaving the house. Everybody, accidentally, gets locked in the house, which of course doesn't really make the guests very happy. So, on Frederick's good faith, he gives them all weapons. Now, here's the thing, with all these things going on, especially with what Annabelle is saying, it's kind of clear we can't trust Frederick. And honestly, one of the big reasons is we don't really know what his intentions are. Nora claims that Frederick is trying to kill her.
Who wants to kill you?
Mr. Lawrence.
But why? The intentions are not really explained at all at the beginning on who necessarily wants what. It is quite obvious we cannot trust Frederick, and heck, we can't even really trust Annabelle, as she's pretty darn suspicious as well. But the thing is that we don't really know what these two are up to. Is Annabelle trying to kill Frederick? Is Frederick trying to kill, Annabelle? Is Frederick just, literally an insane person and trying to kill all the people he invited? Is there maybe a deeper reason as to why he didn't invite all of these people over? There's a lot of mystery to this movie, and although it is technically a horror movie, this movie works incredibly well, almost like a whodunit. Oh, yes. I still have to give you guys your party favors, don't I?
I'm not really the biggest fan of guns.
Can I just beat you with my bare hands?
I'm rather comfortable with what I got.
What's this? Where do I get this useless thing? Why do I get nothing?
Well, I guess you guys will just have to see what happens when we get to the end of the movie. If you survive by the end of the movie, anyways. Speaking of whodunit, unfortunately, the wife isn't going to live long enough to really see the ending of this movie.
She's dead, Mr. Lawrence. Your wife hanged herself.
At least we think. Now, Frederick does start trying to point the finger at everyone else, but of course, everyone basically knows that he's most likely the killer. It's all a matter of where's the evidence, as there isn't really any, except for the fact that clearly they hated each other. They all go their separate ways, again, and basically all swear to stay in their rooms until it is morning. That way, the caretakers come back, they call the police, yada yada. Now, of course, nobody actually stays in their rooms because, God forbid, anybody actually does do the common sense thing and stay in their rooms. Nora leaves after being scared out of the living bejeebas from, I'm guessing, the ghost of Annabelle? As it turns out, big shocker, Annabelle isn't actually dead, and one of the guests was actually brought there on purpose by her, as he is actually a potential love interest for her, and an accomplice in trying to kill Frederick. Annabelle's plan is to basically drive Nora to the point of madness, so that way she accidentally runs into Frederick, who already nobody trusts, and, potentially kill him with one of the guns that was given at the beginning. And lo and behold, this does happen.
No!
The doctor eventually does show up and does try to basically dispose of the body of Frederick by putting him in the vat of acid that was introduced earlier in the movie. Annabelle eventually shows up where all the doors wind up locked. At least we assume they got locked. I mean, it'd be kind of silly if she just couldn't open a door. Where then a skeleton comes out of the vat of acid.
At last you've got it all. Everything I have, even my life. But you are not going to live to enjoy it. Come with me, murderess. Come with me.
Okay. I love this moment. It's pure and utter silliness, but I love it, really. It's not scary, but it's true, utter, spooky fun. The skeleton walking towards her. Apparently, the skeleton is supposed to be Frederick, but dead. His spirit is now taking over the body and is now basically vowing to kill her as well. It's all great spookiness. Of course, she does wind up getting killed, and oh my paws and whiskers, Frederick's alive! As it turns out, he's not actually dead, and he did actually have his own backup plan to whatever Annabelle was planning. Although, I think it's a little bit elaborate, because why the hell did he have a puppet skeleton waiting in a vat of acid, and how did he know the exact way he was gonna get killed off? It's just like, what?
Good night, Doctor. Good night, Annabelle. The crime you two planned was indeed perfect. Only the victim is alive and the murderers are not.
Eventually, he does reveal to everyone that, basically, yes, he's still alive, and his wife tried to murder him, and whatnot, and, basically, he's innocent. It then ends on this weird note.
There'll be more, many more. They're coming for me now. And then they'll come for you.
So, is the house haunted? That's honestly one of the great things I love about this movie. It's the fact that nothing is really truly answered, but you get a lot of suspicion throughout the whole movie that there might be some truth that the house is haunted, even though the culprit is not the house itself, but basically all these characters who are thrown into this whole big giant mess. Although most of the characters are really not that compelling and honestly not even really that interesting, it is kind of cool to follow them along trying to, in any manner of speaking, solve the mystery of this house. But obviously, the two shining stars in this movie are Vincent Price and Carol O'Mart. They are absolutely fantastic as their respective characters, and they just add so much dark humor and charm to this movie. I love almost every single line that these two have to utter to each other, and even to other characters, and it's really fun trying to follow them along, because we're trying to figure out who really is the culprit. Is it him? Is it her? Is the house haunted? There's a lot of things that we truly don't know until the end of the movie, and even at the end of the movie, there are still some questions left unanswered, but it's more in a mysterious manner, but it's not left in an unsatisfying way. House on Haunted Hill, although is not really a scary horror movie at all, I would have to say it is a very clever and honestly pretty dang interesting, almost maybe horror, spooky-esque, whodunit kind of movie.
Then your party will really begin. I wonder how it'll end.
And that's basically the movie. Oh, yeah, I was supposed to give you something, wasn't I? Well... Well, now that that's all done. So, thank you so much for joining us for this review of House on Haunted Hill. And next week, we are going to be reviewing the remake. Oh, joy. But, anyways, this has been the Valley of Death, where everything is spooky, but we keep things light. I'll see you all next week.